Welcome, Bruchim Abbaim. I am Rabbi Paul, your virtual rabbi, and you have found Beit Virtuali. One of the things that's always fascinated me about evolutionary psychology is the attempt to reconcile the mental illnesses and the issues and the anxieties that we have today in the 21st century with, well, who we were over the process of evolution. Homo sapiens have been around for roughly 500,000 years, give or take. We can all trace our DNA back to a common matrilineal ancestor, the so-called mitochondrial Eve, roughly 155,000 years ago. And for the last 80,000 years, we've had essentially the same base cognitive level that we have right now, but without the big cities, and without the internet, and without Moloch the algorithm since 2012, which is barely a heartbeat in the lifetime of this world. But that aside, is it no wonder that we feel out of place? That we feel out of time, that we do not have an easy time finding our place in the world? Is it any wonder that different cultures are sometimes difficult for us to process? I think Harari and Sapiens, if you haven't read it, it's well worth the read. I realize that when he finds your level of expertise, it'll seem quite facile, but if it's not your area of expertise, you will enjoy it quite a bit. But he traces very well the movement from what we call Dunbar's number to our much larger tribal affiliations that we have today. Now, not going too deep into it, Dunbar's number is the sociological and anthropological construct that, of course, many people argue it's larger or smaller and we shouldn't think of it at all, but essentially says that we can hold relationships, some level of mental and friendship intimacy with roughly 150 people, and then once we get larger than that, we need something else in order to be able to know who we can trust or not trust. On the one hand, that's often done culturally and not that different than how we see the world working around us today. We change our modes of dress so that they're recognizable to the people that we associate with. We eat similar foods, we have similar hairstyles, we tattoo or don't tattoo. And we do this because we have joined some sort of grand narrative, something that's been woven together through some creative poet or storyteller or prophet who came up with the reasons why we should be bound together as a larger group than those that we can find in our cave or in our village. And one of the ways that I learned this about myself, as I personally thought that I was on the journey of breaking away from all tribal affiliations, nice fantasy, was when I was living in Philadelphia. I moved there in 1995 to go to Temple University for graduate school. And sorry, non-sports fans out there, it's a sports story. Since I was a child, I was following two American football teams, the San Diego Chargers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Great timing on me making this video for anyone who's in the know. And I'm still following the Eagles because of my time there. And here it is, 2021, as I'm filming this video. And the team's been around since 1933, as they kind of were recreated to take over for the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. And here I am in 2021, and the colors aren't the same. The logo has changed. There's not a single player. Obviously, that's the same. The ownership has changed. And that's true for the most part, even going back a few years ago. Certainly from when I moved to Philadelphia, only the owner is still the same owner. But yet here I have my various different jerseys and root for the same team. And what am I actually rooting for? The name, perhaps the legacy, but honestly what I'm rooting for is my sense of connection and the emotional connection that I have through my experiences rooting for the team over the years. I moved to Philadelphia and didn't know a single person, literally. I think I had a cousin in the city that I'd never met at that time. I knew no one. But I started following the Eagles, and I could go to a bar, put on a jersey, and have not only a conversation, but I literally had one guy offer to help me move the next day, who then came and helped me move. That's called tribe. And in this case, how did he know I was trustworthy, and how did I know he was trustworthy? Because we could talk about what was going on in the team, and we were both wearing, at the time, Donovan McNabb jerseys. And of course, American football, like all sports, have a quasi-religious narrative. Add that to a religion, and this gets much more powerful much more quickly. So why am I bringing this up? Well, I think that many of us, especially since Moloch the algorithm came online, have been decrying the existence of toxic tribalism at the same time that we ourselves are members of tribes that can be toxic, and we don't really recognize the difference. Within religions, we call these tribes denominations or streams, and at their very best, they help us understand what it is we're stepping into when we go to a specific building in order to participate in our religious ritual. At their worst, you want to see the toxicity in play? Well, if you're a Jew, go onto any online Jewish newspaper, left, right, center, and watch for one article about Women of the Wall or Reform Judaism in general, and watch in the comments section the statements that immediately come, that's not real Judaism. And oftentimes those statements are accompanying a great deal of hatred. And before those of us or those of you who consider oneself in the liberal, progressive, reform Jewish world, I have heard in my career as a non-Orthodox rabbi some of the absolute nasty, horrific, denigrating, dehumanizing statements about other Jews from progressive, liberal, and reform Jews towards Orthodoxy. And if you're feeling uncomfortable right now, then it's probably because you believe you're justified in that, and that's a moment to take a deep breath and pause the video. And, well, I guess the dislike function is going to be gone pretty soon from YouTube. But that's just it. We get very toxic and very tribal, even when we don't consider what we're doing to be tribal. And there's an illusion in this that I think has to be dispelled, because I think probably many people that are watching this video have had some sort of similar experience of recognizing at some point in your life that the tribe of your birth wasn't working for you in some way, that you needed to individuate from your parents, or religion as you experienced it as a youth was not working for you, whether the specific religion or the brand of it within the greater religion. And that journey is incredibly hard. It's incredibly painful. And oftentimes it, well, depending on just the nature of the religion of your birth, can be ostracizing. You can be kicked out of the tribe. You can be told to never return. One of the things that I like doing in adult education classes is to help people see those key phrases that are used to draw you back into the tribe, such as, how could you possibly do this and hurt me so much after all that after all that we have done to you? I'm going to leave that one in and not cut it out. To you, I meant for you. Freud is on occasion alive and well. But after you've done that and you get that sense of freedom, that's where the illusion begins, because now we can say, I've left my tribe and now I'm an individual. Well, give me 5 minutes and I will find the tribe to which you are belonging. We replace one tribe with another. And from a larger, more universal standpoint in the Western world, part of the challenge with the demolition of the grand narratives of religion is that we evolved to need to be part of a tribe. And what tribes are there left that provide that grand vision? We have them out there, but we don't perceive them as tribes anymore. And since everyone who's watching this on the internet, there's a couple really easy ways to test and see if you're still part of a tribe. And one of them is, if you have an opinion that is different than the majority of your friends on your social media platform of your choice, how many of us worry about what our friends are going to say before we post that? Our political group, our social group. If the people that are the primary people surrounding us on our platform are even unconsciously asked what will they say about that before we post it, then they're acting as a tribe. Sure, we've got virtual tribes now, but try to, in certain neighborhoods, put up a campaign poster for this person who's a part of this party and is not a part of the party that's in that neighborhood. If you voted for a candidate, try to disagree with something that candidate does after they get into office. Or if you most certainly did not vote for the other candidate, try to say that they have actually done something good, even just a single thing. See how that goes over in your tribal group. See how that goes over if you post that on your Facebook page. You're a member of a tribe. Most likely, as we all are, we're members of several or dozens. But there's another level. It's much more nefarious, and that is if the grand narrative that we've left, if the tribal group that we've left consciously was a religion, especially a religion that had dogma, a belief that you had to believe in, and we broke away from that. That is really hard to do, because we build our lives, our intelligences, our egos around this being the truth. And if we found the way out of that, which is very hard to do, then not only do we have the illusion that we're no longer in a tribe, we also have the illusion that we no longer have dogma. Well, there's a test for that one as well. Try this out. Is there anything that you believe? Now, I'm not talking about hard science, and we can discuss exactly what that means. I'm not just talking about the body of, I'm talking about the process of. I'm talking about outside of that. But is there anything that we believe in sociologically, in the humanities, something that we know is tribal controversial out there, and no one can falsify what it is that I believe? No one can tell me that this truth is anything other than the truth. Then that's a dogma. Anything, I don't care how comforting, how beautiful, how amazing, how beautiful the potential utopia is that comes from this thing, if it's non-falsifiable, if no one can challenge it, if no one can tell you that there's another opinion that should be looked at, or at least that it's debatable, then, well, one dogma's been exchanged for another. So I wanted to jump into what's going to be a 3-week series now dealing with the denominations of Judaism. The preferred term is stream, but the more universally understood term is denominationalism. And this week it's tribalism and denominationalism. Next week it's going to be understanding the streams. And then the third week is a discussion of how we can step past all of this into what I call heterodox Judaism. I'm not trying to create a new stream or denomination. As a matter of fact, that's exactly the point. The idea is to question what it is we bring into the shul that we attend, whether it's Orthodox or Renewal or Reconstructionist, Reform, Conservative, whatever it is. Do we do that consciously, or do we do that unconsciously as part of a tribe with a dogma? And so this video is really about encountering two different illusions. And the first one is what I've just taken us through, the illusion that we are not part of a tribe or that we have no dogmatic thoughts. And hey, if you think that there are things that should be sacrosanct in this area that I'm talking about, put it in the comments down below. I've got my lines. I'm not going to discuss with anyone or allow a dialogue in my life about did the Holocaust happen. The fact of the Holocaust is the fact of the Holocaust. Now, I am incredibly critical on how Holocaust education is done pretty much everywhere on the face of this planet. And that should be absolutely open to dialogue. And part of that dialogue should be, why do we teach it in the way that we do? Are we conscious of why we teach it in the way that we do? Here in Germany, there in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Israel. But do we know what our red lines are? And are those red lines actually something that should be red lines? But I want to close out this video with the second illusion. I say close out. This is still going to go on for a few minutes, of course. But in order to be a conscious member of our tribe, again, I'm making the statement that we're all members of tribes. I'll repeat this again at the end of the video and probably for each of these videos. I am not against being a member of a tribe. I'm against being unconsciously a member of a tribe, of stating that we are not a member of a tribe while we are being controlled utterly by the tribe that we are in, or while we have a strong vested interest in controlling members of our tribe. Does anyone out there have anyone that you are energetically invested in controlling? No, I am very much for consciously choosing what we join and knowing what we are doing and knowing what we are giving and knowing what we are asking from. But within Judaism, in order to do that consciously, and I would challenge Christians to do the same thing and Muslims to do the same thing, there is sectarianism in every single world religion, whether we like to think of it that way or not. But the illusion that we have in Judaism is the illusion of authenticity. This is actually one of the things that Mordecai Kaplan was trying to write about, and he didn't really intend to start a new denomination of Judaism, Reconstructionalism, but he's basically saying, listen, the history of Judaism contains with it huge amounts of national identity, different cultures, different musics, different languages. And it's that cloud of existence, both in the religious and cultural parts of Judaism, that gave that authenticity. But we have this idea now of the authenticity of the black hat. Now, if you have a black hat on right now, or you never have worn one and never will wear one, I'm not going to say necessarily what you think I'm going to say. But we have this idea of authenticity comes in a black hat. And when teaching in Germany, one of the things that I've done over and over again is take the covers of German secular magazines, Spiegel and Stern, Focus, and different groups like that, anytime that they have an article about Judaism, and invariably, what you will see is a Jew with payas and a black hat, even though out of the roughly 100 to 200,000 Jews in Germany today, that is the smallest minority. Most of them look much more like I do. And sure, that's the narrative that the media in Germany wants to bring about. But it really doesn't function that much differently for us if we're not conscious about this. Within Orthodoxy itself, within someone who is wearing or believes that the black hat should be worn, the idea is this is essentially how Judaism has always been, and therefore it is authentic. Within a more liberal stream of Judaism, the idea is we have broken away from that thing that existed earlier and was the established thing. And so therefore, even at an unconscious level, there is the underlying anxiety that perhaps I am not as authentic as someone who looks like that. Now, of course, anyone who knows a little bit about the history of Ashkenaz and European Judaism in general know that that's essentially a gentleman's outfit in 16th century Poland, as are things like Stremel, those big fur hats, something from a specific time and place in Europe. Certainly not something that Moshe Rabbeinu was wearing on Sinai. But whether we're fully buying into or reacting against it, we're still using that thing itself as our point of reference, which means that even if we are not deliberately questioning our authenticity, it's happening at an unconscious level. So this final illusion that I really want to break off today is that there has ever been a monolithic Judaism. Ever. If there's ever been a time that I could stick a pin in a timeline and say, at this point, there was one unarguable version of Judaism that all Jews agreed with. Seriously, as I said that statement right there, whether you're Jewish or non-Jewish, you should be laughing like crazy at the idea that there ever was a group of Jews that all agreed on the same thing. But yet we have this illusion that we all came from one thing at one time, whether that was Abraham or Moses or the time of the first temple or the time of the second temple or the time of the rabbis in the Talmud or the time of those 16th century gentlemen in Poland. I think that there were an awful lot of Jews in Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia, and never forget that roughly 40% of the population of Baghdad was Jewish in 1930. Facts and history are kind of important. I promise you, they weren't wearing black hats. Clearly, we've had a visit from the rabbi's cat. But if there's a period that you want to challenge me on, put that pin in it and down in the comments below, say, well, what about this time? So yeah, the modern denominations, the streams of Judaism that we know today, are creations of the 19th century, coming out of Germany and then exploding in the United States. But if we're measuring ourselves on being authentic because we can trace ourselves back to essentially 400 years ago, or we're worried that we're not authentic because we can't, we're kind of missing this really cool thing about Judaism that I would say is essential, that we've never been monolithic. We've always argued with each other. B'nai Israel, we're the children of the one who wrestles with God. Of course, we wrestle with each other as well. We're supposed to elevate that. Machloket l'shem hashamayim, argument for the sake of heaven. That should not only be our interpretation of Torah and the prophets and the law, but our interpretations of ourselves. So I've thrown a lot out in this video. This is something I've been thinking of doing for a long time. And if there's anything that should bring up questions, I have deliberately provoked today. I've done that so deliberately. I'm looking for the comments. I'm looking for the machloket. I'm looking for the arguments. Put them down below. Let's create this as a dialogue. Let's throw some things out there that we can talk about in the next podcast. But before I close, I want to just reiterate one thing. We're all part of tribes. We need to be conscious of that. I am not anti-tribe. I am pro-conscious membership in our tribes. I'm anti-dogma. I do believe that the second that we think that there is something that we believe to be true that no one can falsify, whether that's political or religious or narrative, that we're going to bring about something very, very dangerous. We see warning signs of that all around us. And one of the ways to get around that is by being aware of why we do these things, being aware of how we signal to our tribe that we are a part of it, and how we know within our virtual and real tribes if we feel that someone belongs to our particular group. And if we find that we don't have a single person that we talk to with whom we disagree, then yeah, this experiment is not going to last very long. There have been periods in history where that's been the case, and none of them are pretty, all of them are ugly. Franz Kafka famously said, the Messiah will come one day after Messiah is no longer needed. That means that life is forcing us to continuously figure out how to work together with people with whom we profoundly disagree. We used to be able to just worry about our tribe because of our cave or our village. Now we're bumping elbows with other tribes all the time. The stakes are simply higher than they ever have been before. So that's the challenge from this video, is to spend a week thinking of tribal affiliation consciously, but perhaps a little bit self-critically. And then ask ourselves if we are able to be in dialogue in that tribe. Are we actually able to go in and ask questions? Are we able to go in and be heterodox? Are we able to go into that tribe and say, you know what, I disagree, let's discuss this? And I'm not talking about if we put 2 or 3 apples on the plate. I'm talking about the substantive, capital B, beliefs of our group. And if the answer is no, then you're part of a tribe that's just as limiting as the one that you thought that you escaped. And you're probably paying a price and being forced to be in a dogmatic system. And we need to start challenging that, which means we have to start challenging ourselves, which means we have to be aware. And that's harder than hell. So let's try to do this a little bit together, be in dialogue with me. And with that, we try to lift at least one person up today. In the process of doing so, we really do begin the process of lifting everyone up together. With that, I say thank you for being a part of Beit Virtuali. We'll see you next time.
בית ישראל עמך אהבת אהבת עולם בית ישראל ועמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות חוקים משפטים אותנו לימדת. תורה ומצוות חוקים משפטים